Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk to a couple people that have a lot more influence in your life than you know, and especially your children's lives. And in general, there's a gem in Milford called the Milford Public Library that we take for granted. And it's only when you're going to lose it. Years ago, when we ran into a budget issue, that we started looking at what would happen. And we'll discuss it because there's other towns around us having the same issues. When we started learning how much we would lose by not funding the library properly. But why don't we start with introductions?
Okay, I'm Stephanie Abisla. I'm the current chair of the Library Board of Trustees.
And I'm Sue Edmonds, and I am the library director.
Now, the Board of Trustees,
Yes.
explain to the town what, all six viewers here want to know, what is a Board of Trustees?
The Board of Trustees is kind of an oversight group that supports and helps with the library. So, for example, when we were doing the elevator project, if there were pieces that had to be researched or information that was kind of outside the absolute function of the library, we could bring that information in for Sue to make a decision or for the persons to make a decision. We review the budgets with them and the warrants, which are the bills. We make sure that those are in line. We look to see how the program is running, and we're kind of the overseers to kind of keep things in line, offer suggestions if we see places for improvement. Amongst us, we share ideas and say, do you think this is going to work, or what about that? Recently, we've been doing some various policy reviews, so we have the library staff bringing in ideas, we bring in ideas, and we mesh it together so that it fits both the library personnel and the public. So we're kind of the liaison between the two. And as you know, we have to go to the finance committee and put in a budget, and sometimes we have to ask for a little more, and sometimes we give back a little more, depending upon what's occurring. And we have to be able to justify that so that it becomes legitimate.
Now, there's a lot of press regarding book content.
Correct.
What books should be in the library, what books shouldn't be. I mean, it feels like censorship to me, but
It can be. And one of the things that we've been discussing as the library and the Board of Trustees is how can we meet the need of the general public? And it is a free public library. And how do we balance that censorship so that it's not really censorship? Just because I disagree with a book that you might be reading, or you disagree with a book that I might be reading, it's a free public library. So we're trying not to, put a book in someone's face and irritate them, but likewise, we don't want to start censoring the books and taking materials off the
what
shelf.
bothers me is when you say free. It's not free, it's taxpayer.
It is tax pay.
So you've got 30,000 people in Milford, and I may not like what you're reading.
Correct. And I might not like what you're reading.
And you may not like what I read.
Exactly.
But as long as
But-
I don't try and force my books on you, and you don't force it on me, I don't see the issue.
And that's the balance that we're trying to maintain, is that when we say free, it's not necessarily free monetary, but it's free access.
Free access to Milford
to-
residents.
And sometimes to the surrounding towns if they're in the cooperative of CW Mars.
The beauty is that if we don't have that book, we'll get it from another library or even across the state, because we have a borrowing privileges with the other 7 library networks. We all work together to make sure that everything is accessible.
Now, we've gone through this years ago. When you first came on, oh God, that was many years ago.
Yeah, yes, it was 2008, yes.
I was going to say, where we looked at Mars and the threat of Mars becoming Pluto and inaccessible. But CW Mars really means that we can borrow from just about any library in Massachusetts, right?
Right. There are 7 library networks in Massachusetts, and CW Mars basically covers from west of 495 all the way out to the New York State border and New Hampshire and Vermont and everything that's west of 495. So that's 147 libraries of various size. Worcester Public Library is part of it. And then we have Agawam that is not as big as Worcester. And all of us share our materials, and everybody, what they do is they select what they feel is needs of their community, and we all share it. And we usually end up getting around 18,000 items out of CWMRs every year. And we give out around 19,000 items every year to the members.
So it pretty well balances.
Yep.
And then also we have reciprocal borrowing with the other 6 library networks. If it's either an ebook or it can be a physical book or material.
Mm-hmm.
How much does it cost us to be part of Mars?
Right now, altogether about 37,000. 30 of it is for our database. That means that they maintain a database for all our items. They also provide a lot of databases at the CWMR's network level, and also sharing ebooks called Overdrive. And we are 2 things with Overdrive. We are an Advantage customer, which means that we select our own books, and that we have first opportunity for our patrons to use them. And then after a little while, those books will be allowed to be borrowed by anybody in CWMRs.
How do you borrow an electronic book?
You go up to our website, milfordtownlibrary.org, or you go over to the cwmars.org website, and in the right-hand corner it says Overdrive. And what you do is you click on that. You have to put your barcode in and so you have accessibility, and then you go into that platform and you just follow the instructions, and you can borrow streaming video, you can borrow ebooks, you can borrow MP3s. And also with Milford, we also have several databases like Canopy. And what Canopy is, it's streaming video. You can get off our website. You, again, just like Overdrive, you put in your library card number, it verifies it, and you can borrow up to 10 movies a month. And these are the ones that are not usually seen, on TV or whatever. They're very avant-garde. They're the ones that generally don't get main airplay.
But again, I understand if I took my library card in as a kid, handed it over,
And you got
and
handed
I
a
got a
book.
book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We
And
still do that.
And I had to bring back that book within.
What's really nice about the electronics, it's almost like an Amazon download, where it downloads to your device, and then it expires. So if you put it on for 2 weeks, at the end of 2 weeks, if you don't renew it, the access just gets removed.
So I don't even have to come back.
Correct.
No. Book-wise, we have about 117,000 volumes within the library. That means the Library of Things. That also means our books.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a very healthy anime collection down in the young adult room. A lot of the kids like the graphic novels. And it starts them reading.
117,000?
Yeah. And then we have access to over 1 million ebooks and other MP3s throughout the networks.
And ebooks are becoming more popular as people, I know I carry a Kindle with me. I will sometimes read a physical book, and sometimes I'll read the Kindle. And the fact is I can carry 6 or 7 books with me in a small space, and I can flip to one book or another.
I know that in my house they got the Kindles and the Schnooks or book.
The Nooks,
The
yeah.
Nooks,
yeah.
the Schnooks, whatever they are. And then they had to get one for the beach because it was more, it gave more light, more illumination.
Yeah, backlight, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because my darling bride's library in the house got full. Now all of a sudden, it never fills because she's getting everything electronically.
Not everything will always be electronic, but you can still walk in and get your, Daniel
Yeah.
Steele if you want it.
It's a nice balance, though, because my husband does a lot of reading and a lot of physical, and I'm tripping over books all the time. And I was riding the train for a number of years.
Bad Russ.
Yeah. He shares them with his brother, so it's okay. And with the library. So, but basically I was going back and forth on the train at one point, and I would be almost finished one book, and I knew it wasn't going to last me the day, so I had to carry 2 books. And so I kind of went to a Kindle, and now I have, a couple hundred books on my Kindle, and I can read whatever I want when I want.
When we first switched over to books on tape,
Yeah?
the neighbors accused us of trying to relive our childhood because
Having-
from the boat was just north of 2 hours, and most of the tapes were 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So you'd get right to the house. We were in a condo, a townhouse, and you got 20 minutes left.
Yep.
So we'd sit in the car, and the neighbors would look out and say, "What are you two parking? You think you're?"
They used to have on one of the Worcester radios, when I was going to school, they used to have a radio theater. And it was like an hour long, and it only took me half an hour. I was living in Shrewsbury at the time. And I came racing in one time and turned on the radio in my father's house class. I can't talk right now.
Yeah.
But I personally can't do books on tape when I'm driving because I close my eyes and imagine things.
Oh,
and that's
God.
not a way to drive.
Yeah. Well, the newest things are called playaways.
Yeah.
They were about 10 years ago. They tried them, and it's like a little cassette, and it's almost like a little Walkman where you have headphones, and you end up listening to it. But also, you can plug it in to all the newer cars, and you can listen to it through the radio.
Because most of the cars don't have tape decks.
Yeah.
I would say none of the newer cars have tape decks.
I had
And many of the
my
cars.
last car still had a tape deck.
Yep. And many of them now don't have CD players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the library is keeping up on that as well as far as what technology can we replace it with or substitute or grow into so that people still have access to the
So
things.
for
they
30
like.
grand a year, which is a lot of money, but not really, if they're doing your inventory and you get to borrow 18,000 items.
Yeah, what they do is that is for the basics. Like they maintain our circulation system, they maintain the database. Though we do data entry for all the items that we own, and they also provide access to the ebooks and other access to other library networks for their materials as well.
And you talk about the library in general, and we often say we need to enhance the schools because it's for the children and the future. We need to take care of the senior center because it's the people who have paid their dues and deserve something in return.
It's the people who built Milford.
Yeah, and the library is actually for everyone, from start to finish and everybody in between. And so it's a really, really valuable resource that way. Little kids can come in and start to learn to read. We have programs like tax preparations for the elderly. We have all kinds of things in between. So it really is
I
a
remember
valuable
when my
resource.
daughters were young, Sue Ellen,
Sue
Yep.
Ellen Zamaski, yes.
every Tuesday
Yeah.
we'd go down and Lexi would sneak her way to the front and sit there and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it really did set her up
Yep.
for it was a life lesson on, by the way, there's a lot of value, one, for reading books.
Yep.
But two, for coming to the Milford Library. The town is providing a heck of
Yep.
a service.
And the socialization, they have a children's program now, which is kind of, I forget what we're calling it, because I know Sarah took the little one to it. Like
Oh, we have a free time where
Free time.
it's almost, people come in and the children just play. And it's really good for a lot of the new English second language learners because they're being exposed to a lot of different type of kids. And then we also have crafts and everything, so they're starting to learn to work with each other.
Mhm.
And it's really nice. And they usually,
the parents get to meet each other while the kids
10,
are playing.
12,
So
yeah.
Well, especially the change in family, where you have a lot of single-parent families.
Mhm.
I mean, the library, even back when I used to go there, you noticed how many single-parent families were coming. Gave mom, sometimes dad, a break.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like you were sticking your child in front of Disney
Yeah.
on TV and learning nothing.
It was a socialization process as well, as opposed to.
The kids got the benefit.
Yeah.
But mom got a break too, and I always thought that was super.
Mm.
Because how a single parent, we had 3 of us against 2, because my sainted mother lived with us. So it was always 3 adults trying to keep up with 2 kids, and we barely won that argument. But
And the extended family is becoming more rare
Yeah.
as well. I grew up next door to my grandmother, so we always had my other mother.
yeah,
You know, she kept us all in line.
No, my mom lived with us for 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, it was my darling bride saved her life by, when my father passed away early, coming home and saying, you know, you got to move your mother in with us. And it was like, I didn't know how to ask. But it was true. If my mom had been, we were down in D.C., if my mom had come back to Milford by herself, she would have withered away.
Yeah.
She got down to the house in Maryland, and you could see Target, radar acquisition, lock. I have a granddaughter. I have something to focus on.
Oh, yeah. And they need a purpose in life. You know?
Now, for Mars, we talk about borrowing books and all, talk about inventory, but if you don't, it's not just 30 grand. You have to maintain certification too, right?
Yes, there are certain milestones you have to meet annually, and you know, we always talk about that at certain times of the year. And what it's called is the Municipal Appropriation Requirement, which is affectionately known as the MAR. And what that does, it provides a shelf of service. And it's a calculation of your last 3 years, and then they add a percentage on, and that is what every library, every town's different because of populations. But we have a certain level we have to meet, and if we don't meet that, they'll say you're going to be put what they call in waivers. You won't be decertified, but you would be on waivers, still get your money, but they're going to monitor your financial situation, and after a couple of years, they're going to say it hasn't improved. You will be decertified.
Yeah, but realistically, it wasn't unfair. It seemed like they were trying to make sure that, I mean, the library's an easy target. Not a good target, but an easy target. It's not like you're taking policemen off the street or firefighters off the trucks.
If you
And
don't
if
put
I
a couple of
remember,
books
we
on-
had to
yeah.
make sure that the library was not singled out for bigger cuts or less than the rest of the departments.
If everybody in town, let's say, had a 10% cut, there wouldn't be an issue. But if you cut the library 25 and everybody else 10, that's when the Mass Board of Library Commissioners says, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. Everybody has to be at the same level of cuts. If you do that, you will be potentially decertified.
And decertified, I can still use the library, right?
You can use the facility. You can go
Right.
into the facility, like you can go into, like the Douglas issue. They can come into the Milford Library, take a book off the shelf and read it. They just can't check it out.
On site.
On site.
on
They
site.
can't check it out. They can't leave the premises. They can use it on our premises, but they can't take it out.
But Stephanie, isn't it also that one of the things I can do is go in and say, Miss Sue, I don't have this book. I can't find it in your library stacks. And you say, okay, we'll order it. And within days, it shows up magically,
Yes.
and I get to see, even read it in the facility. But if you're not certified, if you're in, City A, you can't order books from anybody else either.
No, it's a very serious situation to be in. I mean, we talk about decertifying, but it's not just, you can't loan out your books, you can't loan anybody else's books, you're ostracized from the entire process.
You're an island.
Yeah. Libraries and their trustees can decide, well, we're going to loan to you maybe our items, but any of the other towns can say to them, no, we have decided anything that is Milford you cannot get. You're welcome to come in and use it, but we're not going to send it to you as a
There have been
decertified patron.
There have been some towns, for example, that if you want to borrow a book, there's a $25, pick a number, $25 fee to take the book out of the building.
Yeah, you
Or
can join.
$10 or whatever, they can set it themselves. The difficulty on the other side of allowing something like that, first of all, if they take it and don't return it, we don't have any recourse to get it back, so it costs us. But then if you ask somebody, you get a $5 book and you're asking them to put down $25 to take it home for the night, it's kind of absurd. So
Well,
they
it's
really put
also-
themselves
I
in a
mean,
bind.
we look at the people in Milford and very proud that a lot of them are doing very well.
Mhm.
But there are other families, that are getting by. Somehow, I was always amazed when I learned that my mother made a whopping $11,000 a year working at Draper.
Mm-hmm.
My dad made the big bucks. He made $18,000 at General Motors. But we were never affluent or rich or anything. we made out.
Yep.
I had everything I needed, and probably a little bit more. But there was no money there to just throw around.
Right.
So I worry, especially now that 50% plus, 50+% of our kids are eligible for free lunch.
Yep.
Now, everybody gets free lunch, but eligibility. And that means they're making less than $34,000 a year for a family of four.
Yeah, it's,
Mhm.
now, one of the things we did recently, well, within the last year or so, was we got rid of all the late fees. So I think, didn't we set it up that you loan a book out for 2 weeks, it gets an automatic 2-week renewal, no late fees, and only if you don't return the item do we
Yeah, you
request that
bill.
you replace
All
it.
your pennies and nickels that you used to tease me about, that you get from the fines, it was declining anyway, because with ebooks, there's no fees. There's no,
Just send it out.
penny, yeah,
You ask for it, we send it out, and when it's due, we take it back.
yeah.
I still have horrible memories of the walk of shame. My
Yeah.
10 cents walking up to the desk in the old library to Poppy Romelli.
Yep.
And watching her look at me.
That
wasn't
stare.
it wasn't the 10 or 20 cents, but it was the look that you
Yeah.
wanted to make sure you never were late because of it.
Yep.
Libraries have changed. A lot of them are seeing what you're talking about, people not having money and seeing those fees as a barrier to access. And unless they have not, if they've lost the book or damaged it, then it's a 6-week loan and then we just get it back. Most of the libraries in Massachusetts do the same thing, and also through the nation, because they feel that is a barrier.
What kind of percentage of books don't get returned?
Not that much. I don't really, maybe 1% if we're
Oh,
lucky.
okay.
I was gonna say, when I look at the warrants and I see the code for a replacement, it's like
Yeah.
there's one, maybe two in a set of warrants.
Yeah, our motto is, all right, if it's a children's book, check underneath the bed, we'll give you another 6 weeks. And usually they come back with another pile of books.
Well, because that's the if you can't afford it, putting the pennies out is embarrassing.
Yes.
It's also a financial piece. If you can't afford the book and you can't afford the fine. And then on top of that, what do you do if the book is, you thought you lost it, and 8 weeks from now you find it? Do you bring it back or not? And are you going to get charged for it or not? And this way, it's
No,
just
there
if
used
you
to be
find
a
it, bring it
slot,
back.
and rather than get the look, you'd sneak there at night and put the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's like, we'd like the book back. We bought the book, you enjoyed it, bring it back. And the fewer barriers we have to that, the
Well,
easier
we've
it
been
is to borrow.
fortunate that town meeting
Yes,
has always been
Very supportive.
very supportive of the library and the kids in general.
But at the same time, they know that the library's not going to spend their money willy-nilly. We only come when we need things, and we've always given back when we didn't need it. Like, we gave some back for the elevator. We got a little extra, and now we're working on Stephanie's really enjoying this one, the fire suppression system.
yes.
I still can't figure out why the wet one is wet and the dry one is not so wet but still wet. One of these days.
I did all the research on that. And I even had little diagrams, and it finally clicked on what was happening. They both put out the fire with water. It's just a matter of what's right behind the valve. And if there's air behind the valve, it's referred to as a dry system.
Right.
So it has to activate a couple of ways in order to break down the water barrier. In a wet system, as soon as it's activated, there's water behind
There's
it.
water right there.
Mhm.
But
Now-
then you get more deterioration in a wet system, right?
You get more deterioration in a dry system.
Smoke
If you
wise.
think of it, it's kind of equivalent to like the Back Bay, where they kind of filled it in and all the pilings are underwater. And if they stay underwater,
They're okay.
they're okay. As soon as they get exposed to the air, they start to rot. And in a sense, that's what happens in the system, is there's air in the
Now,
water.
there's a special place in the library called the Milford Room.
I know.
Yeah, we're waiting for you to ask.
Because there's a very special
Special
item in
yearbook.
there. And in consideration, there used to be like 4 systems that you could do. There was a chemical system, which has since been banned. They've just banned it right out. There's the carbon dioxide, where you suffocate the fire, but you also suffocate anybody who's in
I was
there.
going to say, the problem with that is better be clear of people.
Exactly, and that room is not clear of people.
It
So,
leaks.
so the option then is to do a wet system or a dry system. Currently, there's a dry system, and it's having some, because of the air mixture in there, is having some issues. And so, one of the things is to take it down, fully clean all the piping, and put it back up. But we'd have to keep doing that maintenance, fairly extensive maintenance, continually. The other is to do the wet system, in which they fill it, and it sort of preserves itself, kind of like the Boston Piers, kind of preserves itself with the liquid. And in talking to various people, and doing some research on it as well, most libraries, most new buildings are actually using a wet system. And they said the reason for using the dry system is that if there's a chance of water freezing, because then it would just shut off the system. And another consideration that I just found out is if you have a dry system, there's a potential that you would have not only the water damage when it finally put out the fire, but you would also have smoke damage. And that's really nasty to get rid of. You can dry a book, but getting rid of smoke is...
Yeah.
So it looks like the best way to go from all conversation is to go with the wet system. And the other thing that's misunderstood is when they put the sprinkler heads in the ceiling at various points. Hollywood has kind of set it up that if you hold a match up to one, the entire building floods. And that's not the case. It's just the one head.
What's the area? It would set off each.
It would just be one that would
Each.
go off. And then if that didn't handle it and the fire spread,
Right,
the
then
next one would go
kicks
off.
and okay.
So it's a very contained location, and it has to have a source to trigger it.
Well, we've budgeted a fire suppression system
Yes, we're working on that right now.
and waiting for you to come back with the recommendations as to
Yeah.
which one.
Well,
We-
we've kind of figured out the recommendation. We're looking for the budget numbers now. Yeah, so we're looking to see. We had sort of a quote last year, but then things kind of went off track, and they've looked at it again, and they think they can do it in a potentially more economical but just as efficient manner. So we're waiting for that quote to come through.
Now, a few years ago, you came in and said, I have 4 plugs in the library, and a lot more people plugging into them. Now, I'm being facetious, but we were really limited on how much electricity we
Yeah.
had.
That was back in 2014
In 14, we invested a lot of money to,
to add more lines, and we have more accessibility now.
has it worked?
Yes, and then also what we did last year, and if it wasn't for Mike Nicholson, the chair of the cultural subcommittee, I don't think we would have been able to redo the lights, and it's been great. We've saved a lot of money this year.
They put in all new LED lights.
Yeah.
They took care of all the shadowing that occurs, so now regardless of where you sit, the lighting is bright and clear.
Well,
And
we didn't pay for all that.
no,
Yeah, you did it through
Some of it.
capital planning.
some of it. Didn't we get some funding for it as well?
Well, they gave us a discount,
Yeah.
how they do that discount.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did it with capital planning for last year. And with the budget, it's always interesting what impacts the budget. This year, gas was several $1,000s over in the budget line, but I made it up with electricity. I was sitting there going, wait a minute, the electricity budget's not depleted yet because of what we did.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing about trustees and the library and everybody collaborating with each other. It goes beyond books. We have to worry about the building. We have to worry about costs. All this so that people can walk in and ask for a book or get an ebook.
People walking in, well, not now, it's summer, But during the year, is there still that massive herd flooding
Yes.
coming over?
Yes, there is. And
And I thought that was the most wonderful, pardon for interrupting, but I thought that was the most wonderful thing to see the herd of kids coming across the
And I
street
think
from
the
Stacy.
redesign of the library worked out really well for
Yeah.
our limited footprint, is you walk into the main library, if you want to call it the adult section, it's the quiet, the traditional library section. Off to the side, kind of in glass enclosures so you can keep an eye on them, is the children's section. And so you can close them off and keep an eye on them, and it's a protected, safe spot for them. And then downstairs, of course, I taught middle school for a number of years,
Was that the young adults?
The
yeah,
young
the
adult.
young adult section.
and they, as middle schoolers, et cetera, those coming over from Stacy, can get a little rowdy. But they're
A
down.
little?
I'm being very nice. I used to be a
Yeah.
middle school teacher. I know more
I was gonna
secrets.
say, they're kids.
Yeah, but they're out of the main population, where an adult might want to read a book or do some studying. They're older than children, and so they have their own section.
But they're
And they-
also out of the environment where they're looking for something to keep busy. Having the kids in the library versus out on the streets
Is a good thing.
just sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
to me.
And they have their own space, and they can be kind of as loud or boisterous, and there's research. I mean, I've walked in numerous times trying to find Sue for
Yeah.
something, and the kids are socializing, which is a good thing. Some of the kids are sitting on their laptops or their Chromebooks or whatever devices, and they're doing homework. Other kids are sharing information about how to do their paper homework, and there's resources that are age appropriate in that area.
Now,
So.
One great service is parents, I mean, school's over at 2:00. I don't know of a lot of jobs that end at 2.
Right.
So it helps the families of Milford,
Mhm.
because they can come over for 2 or 3 hours, be in a controlled environment. But it's not just babysitting, there's a lot of programs
No,
going on.
We have a lot of programs, a lot of arts and crafts, and we try and do something every afternoon or close to it, yeah. And we do have food, because a lot of libraries allow food, and sometimes these kids are hungry. So we may not be the most healthiest of snacks, but we've got snacks if we have a program going on, and it helps out too.
Yeah, but a lot of the kids, breakfast and lunch at school are their main meals.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't get healthy food or any food at night.
Yep.
So even the snacks that you provide late in the afternoon
Yep.
help.
And we do have a lot more of the Brazilian speakers coming in too, since we have somebody that speaks Brazilian Portuguese. We also have somebody who speaks Spanish, and that has made a difference with the new families coming in. They feel more comfortable. They're not anxious if they don't know the right word in English, and it has really helped out tremendously, especially with the young adults.
Well, that was the first shock for people like me when we left home, went out into the environment and said, Mom, what are they speaking? Doesn't everybody speak Portuguese?
And then I grew
So-
up, doesn't everybody speak English? No,
Right.
just,
No, but
it is.
seriously,
And
You
communication
want
is
the
so,
assimilation.
Yeah.
Because if they're going to succeed, you got to speak English in this country. I don't care what anybody says. You'll do better, my opinion only, no data behind it, but you'll do better if you know how to communicate with more people.
communication, as I think
Mhm.
one of the companies used to
But
say,
you-
communication is key.
You used, or still do, have English as a second language classes.
Yes, we have them at night. We have it twice a week, and this summer we usually take it off, but we have it on Tuesdays right now, and it's drop-in. And basically what we do is try to get people familiar with certain phrases, so if they have to go to the grocery store, or if they need to get a job, they'll know enough to have enough English so they can do it. And then what's going to happen, the Framingham school system's going to be working with Stacy in the fall, and you may have seen it in the newspaper, they're going to have a more organized English as second language classes. They'll be a little bit longer, more structured, but for us, it's a way to get people in there, they start learning, and they start meeting people, from other countries, also from their home country. So they all help each other learn English.
That's fantastic.
Libraries are a wonderful
Yeah.
resource. And when I retired from teaching, it was like the library is the next best thing, because it's a resource and a learning opportunity for everybody.
I know we talked about censorship, but do you get much pressure from the community to limit or to select certain topics?
We have a certain process where we can give you a form and you fill it out. And then what I do is I decide what I can do with your question. And then otherwise, they can also go to the trustees. But we also have a very strong collection development policy that predates me, and we always fall back on that. And it says access for all, no matter what.
We had around, I think, the previous election, there was a little bit of brouhaha of censorship and what we should or shouldn't. And I'm not sure what motivated that, whether it was to make a name for oneself.
Politics.
That's what I mean, make a name
Yep.
for oneself or something. And having taught in the middle school, it was like, let's put the book down in the middle school area. And people, we don't want our children. It's like, that's the time that they're sort of discovering themselves, and you need to have somebody there talking, and parents should be involved also. But
There's got to be a limit. You're not going to put certain.
there are not. I mean, there porn and
Exactly.
and blatant materials. No,
No.
I mean,
but
that's
you
a
sit there and say, wait a minute. Who's to say I'm right? I know I'm right for my family because it's
and
my
that's
family.
That's where families should be involved in what their children are accessing.
It's like you turn around and say, I'm Catholic. Catholic is the best thing for my family because we decided it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's the best thing for everybody. I know
Right.
that's blasphemy, but, realistically,
Yeah, it's
if I want the right to be Catholic, then I have to respect your right to not be.
right, and that's what we try to do is the trust. And there is a formal kind of written challenge, so you can't just come in. I want that book
Yeah.
off the shelf. Now, I went to one of the library webinars on book challenges and things of that sort, and I think it was Natick got challenged because they had a book. I think it was called I Vagina or some I think it was probably a kid's biology book of sorts with a focus. I haven't seen the book, so I don't know. I just was listening to how they handled it. And apparently it was in the children's section on a lower shelf, and a parent of a 3-year-old, 4-year-old or something found it, and the mother was up in arms. And the way they handled it, they said, if we take it off the shelf, we're denying access. So what they did was they said, this really should be for, let's say, I'm just picking a number, 6th or 7th graders, so we'll put it up on a higher shelf.
Yeah.
And that way they still had access to it, but it was appropriately placed. And so those are some of the things that the trustees, along with Sue, and the staff, try to work on, is making sure it's accessible appropriately.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line sometimes. That's part of the reason I retired. It's like, I'm not there to raise your children. I am there to help them learn certain subject
I
matter.
remember when the old Woodland, I was in the principal's office because I was on this parent council, and this young boy was brought in because apparently he told the teacher with a graphic gesture that she was number 1. Now the kid is 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was stunned that a kid at that age would flip off a teacher. But when the parent came in, she starts, first thing, screaming at the teacher saying, what did you do to my child to get him upset? I didn't even know how to react.
Well, there were mixed messages, because one is the parents want to send the child to school and have a child come back, and have a young adult come back. And then if you try to help put bumpers on to get him in the right direction, you have no business raising my child. Well, it's like, it's a community. It's a community effort all the way.
Again,
Same thing in the library.
The
my
library,
parents,
yeah.
my father never touched me, never whacked me. But if I embarrassed the family by doing something like that, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be pleasant.
No, and that's what we do with the library, is try to make sure things are available so that when you want to teach your children about those resources are available. If you choose not to participate, don't. But we're not, and we try to be careful with our displays too, is to make sure that we're not offending people.
Well, town
It's-
meeting is the ultimate judge.
Yeah.
Because if you offend people,
Oh, yeah.
you're gonna stop getting support from them. And when you need the new $80,000 for the elevator or whatever, they are not gonna be voting
Exactly.
for it.
True.
Yep.
We do our best to make sure that there's accessibility to all kind of information, and we do display it, but we do it in a way that just, it's factual. This is, let's say Pride Month. This is some of the materials that we have, and if you're interested in this, we'll help you do, find more. Things like that. We don't put stickers on certain type of genres because we don't want anybody to be targeted. And we do have a lot of wide variety of anime and other, LBGT materials.
But again, I have the option to participate in using the LGBT material or not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't force it on me, but don't.
But don't take it away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the reasons that we have done very well over the years is because we are we're a portal of information. We provide it, and then where you take it, that's you. You decide how you're going to use that
And
information.
like I say, to me, town meeting is the ultimate judge. Because if they don't support it, I mean, not that they'd shut the library down, but if you started going against the Milford residents,
Oh, yeah.
it'd be a lot harder for us to propose some of the investments we've made.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we may look like we play with everybody, but there's being quiet. You can get other things done.
We get the important things done.
What other
Yes.
programs do people take advantage of at the library?
Oh, the museum passes,
Well, you got, the museum passes, you got the tax programs.
the AARP tax programs. We have a poetry reading coming up August 9th. We work with a foundation out of Uxbridge, and we're having two very good poets come in, and they're going to do their work. Naturally, I can't remember their names right now, but it's up on our website. We have a lot of
We have art displays.
art displays, yes.
When Sal was involved more actively, they had the Altair art
They're coming in
classes.
October, yeah.
So they put up an art display, and
And all of this is basically free to residents.
Yeah.
And I should mention, we got to say thank you to the Friends, our wonderful
I
garden.
was going to ask you about the Friends of the.
I was about to
Library.
also mention the Friends put on a book sale every year.
Yeah.
So it's really nice when we talk about, books that accumulate
Yeah,
at
my
home.
darling bride hasn't been donating because now it's all electronic.
Oh, I donated about 300 books the last time. It's
Oh, I
like-
remember taking cases.
and the worst part is it didn't make a dent.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but no, but they take the books and they sell, so if you
Yeah,
can't
but
hand
when
it
you
off-
say sell, if I remember right, you were buying them for pennies
yeah,
on the dollar.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's a book you've read that you don't want anymore. They get a couple pennies out of it. A lot of times they'll donate those books. If they haven't sold them, they'll donate them to various other facilities or.
But as a Milford resident, those pennies add up to free passes to
They
places.
do. Free passes, gardens. People have started to use the garden
Programs,
now with the,
yeah.
with the weather getting better.
Programs. Yeah.
But what tickets are available? I can go down and get tickets to the Museum of what?
Museum of Science, the aquarium,
Worcester Art Museum,
Children
Southwick Museum, Southwick Zoo.
I don't know about the zoo. I have to.
No, I thought it was
Davis Farmland we have.
Davis Farm. I thought I saw
But
something.
there's a number of things that,
But there's a whole,
again, if money's tight, even if it isn't, if I want to go to the Museum of Science and I don't have to pay for it, why should I?
There are various discounts. You may get a family of four. You may get $10, $15 off. The Museum of Fine Arts. We used to have the Isabella Gardner Museum. We had the Patriot Place over there at Foxborough for a while. We've got the Equatorium. We have several of the state passes available. Just go over to the website, and if you're a Milford resident, you have the first opportunity. And then after that, we allow other people to borrow them.
So I can sign up and say August 12th and 13th.
Yeah.
And if the passes haven't been used,
They'll put your name on the,
Put your
they'll
name on
put
it,
the name
yeah.
on the list, and you come in and pick them up,
that's pretty
and
cool.
off you go.
Mhm.
Do you still give library cards?
Yes, we do.
But you can carry them on your phone.
You
I
just
know, but there was
run da-
something about the library card. Mine, when Paul Revere gave me my library card.
Yeah, there's something nice about like snapping it on the counter and saying, I want this book.
You
But there's
can-
something
yeah.
about the electronic one when you're like, I found this book. Oh, library card? Yeah, right here on my phone. So it's again,
I'm always carrying it, even if I'm not.
yeah, and it's a nice flexibility, for everybody and anybody. You can carry the paper, you can carry the physical card, you can put it electronically.
What do you think the biggest challenge you're going to face in the next couple of years is?
Personally, English is second language programming, making sure that all the newcomers come in and are feeling, welcomed, and equity. That's the big thing right now is equity. And making sure that everybody that gets
There's-
involved.
There's a diverse,
Yeah.
Do you have Portuguese and Spanish books?
Yes, we do. We're growing our collection.
I'm hearing a large influx of potential Indian, but I'm not sure. But,
But this is terrible to paint with a broad brush, but do the Indian subpopulation not all speak English?
Just what the kind of
but
materials
it's all,
they
I was
want.
going to say, but it's also the type of material, the
Okay.
the genre of material. Some people like science fiction, some people like fiction, some people like romance or whatever. So
Well,
you want to make
you look
sure.
at 1 billion people
But you look at
speaking so many languages, and it seems like when we go to India, the common language is English.
But again, it's kind of like even going into the various religions, there are certain sectors that you're more focused on. So even though you might all be Christian or non-Christian, the denominations, and so again, the same thing with the various populations. We speak English, but now I have sort of an interest in Irish history. You have it in Portuguese history. We both speak English. We appreciate each other's culture, but our personal interest might be a little.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure those things are available to people as well.
So what kind of programs can you offer to help the assimilation?
Well, besides English, the classes we have
Second
at night,
language.
we are working with Family Network periodically, and they'll have a Spanish or Portuguese story hour. We try and do that.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, we do it not every so often, and then we also have our English story hours. And just, I never thought, just have playtime. Having all of the playtime things that we have in the children's room or young adult room, and people just communicating. That's the big
people
thing.
disvalue a lot of times playtime as wasteful time, and playtime is a time you assimilate and
I was
pull
going to
together.
say, I remember learning a lot of English. Because
During
at
play.
home, it wasn't until my darling bride came to my house for the first time when she looked at me and says, "Don't you ever speak to your parents in English?" I went, no. It's only when we have non-Portuguese speakers come to the house that my mother or I would switch to English just out of respect or make it easy. So that playtime.
Playtime is important just to process. You get a lot of information in a reading book or a lot of information. When I was working in industry, at the end of the day, I might sit and play solitaire. And they go, "What are you doing?" I'm saying, I'm just moving the cards around. But basically my brain is kind of saying, now if I did A, would B work? Or I got to, what about C? I have to fit that in. And yet I couldn't sit there and just sit. I had to kind of do something. And so the do something was the playtime.
Well, it's like going into the Milford room. Yes, I like to look at my old class books, but you learned about Milford. You learned about the people who are now at the senior center
Yeah.
who built Milford.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's important that you keep in perspective, as you mentioned. we're doing a lot for our kids. You know, and I consider my kids as 4,400 kids that we have.
And that's important because they are the future. And there's no denying that. If we don't give them the history, if we don't give them,
Well, if we want
manners.
Milford to prosper, that's where the biggest impact's going to come from.
Education, you don't know where you're going to strike an iron. And that's the thing with the library. We provide all this, we work with the senior center, the schools, or whatever, and then all of a sudden a spark may happen, and it may not happen in the library, but what you did there may start someone's path to education or whatever.
But it was cool to look at the history of Milford. Because a lot of people who have come to Milford recently being less than 50 years,
Yeah.
Don't know pink granite.
Oh, yeah.
Sacco and Vanzetti.
I mean, how many people, if you bring up these things, like
Yep.
a lot of new people have said, well, why did they save Stacy? Because it was Milford.
And, I always have a sort of a philosophy if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. So you don't come in and that the others, you don't change just for change's sake. But you don't stay the same if there's a way to improve it. And there's a fine balance between those two. And the library tries to work real hard at that. What do we need to change to stay current, but keep the tradition?
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, yeah, that's why the library's where it is.
yeah, I mean, it is, people complain that there's limited parking, and it's across the street from the schools, and we get an inundation of. But it is what it is, and it's still a great resource.
But again, the limited parking, I can't remember how many years ago, we thought we had an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not budgeted to buy a property next to the library. And the idea was we'd make it a parking lot. Someday, and when the opportunity comes up, you'll hit the same, no, Sue, we can't afford it. We're destitute, we're broke. How much?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After we grump and groan about how much it'll cost, because property values in Milford have gone up,
Yep.
we'll deal with the fact that we don't have enough parking across from Stacy. We don't have enough parking for the library. And if a property comes that's contiguous, I can't imagine we wouldn't try and go for it.
Yeah, those chances always arise.
And then
Yeah.
you also have the famous fence.
That's a lovely fence. I am partial to that white fence.
But we went through the whole issue of making it safe for our kids.
Yeah.
Because people
And-
were
and-
doing bad things outside the fence.
Yes, they were.
And even for the elderly, using it, they park in the parking lot, you don't want to have to kind of look over your shoulder and see if you're going to be mugged or attacked or anything of that sort. I mean, it's a very welcoming.
My biggest
place.
concern back then, still now, is not the mugging and all, because I'm still
Oh, yeah.
have jaundiced eye of Milford being a safe place.
Oh, no, I use that as a general
No,
term
but-
for,
You got somebody like my mother, when she was 80-some, 90 years old. If she's got to park way up the street,
Yeah.
and it wasn't practical a lot of times to say, just drop her off,
mhm.
because you needed to help her get
Right.
in the building.
Yep.
So coming up with a way of increasing the parking is something that I hope we can do someday.
We keep an eye out.
Yeah, we keep an eye out.
We keep
You
an
never
eye
know
out.
where it may pop up.
If you were asked, how do I take advantage, how best take advantage of the library as a Milford resident, what would you say?
I don't have this one answer. I think it depends on what you need at the time, what you need to find out information-wise, what availability do you have to get to the library, because you've got ebooks, you've got regular books, you've got programs. It all depends on what's happening in your current lifestyle. That's how you use the library.
And I'll agree and disagree with you, because I think the one way is to go to the library.
I was going to say, you can.
Show up, ask questions, and see what's available.
I was
But
going to
there's
say,
no parking.
one of the things you could do is you can look at the website. There's a lot of information, and there are newsletters that come out that tell you what's coming on, what's happening. that's kind of a viewer's look at what's happening to the library. I think going in and perusing the shelves and just kind of looking around and asking questions, you can always phone the library.
See, I love the idea of when Lexi and Emily were small. We'd take them in, they'd go sit to Miss Sue Ellen's talks. They'd go into that room on the right where the little kids were and
Yeah.
keep themselves busy. And I shut down.
Yeah.
I looked around, I learned, because I don't know that I would get the same out of looking at the website, but I'm
No,
old.
no, but I'm just saying, is, again, the way you can get to people. Some people, looking at, I think the website lists the museum passes that we have. So
Yeah.
if you were looking to see, should I, if you're more
Old-fashioned.
old-fashioned.
I'm
I don't
old.
mean to be, yeah. No, but I'm just saying, my next door neighbor used to just call, hey, do you have a museum pass do you have a pass for such
But
and
see, what I'm
such?
thinking of is if I go down there, my tension level goes down because I don't have any specific chore to do.
Mhm.
And I meet people.
Yeah.
And I talk to them.
Yeah.
If I'm learning English, they'll help me as to how I do it better. But also, different residents will tell me there's museum passes, there's this, there's that. And it's easier to pick it
I
up.
liked going in sometimes and just walking down the various
Oh, shells.
shelves
Yeah.
and just kind of, oh, there's a book on this. Oh, there's a book
Yeah.
on that. And I don't maybe pick one up, or maybe I go, I think I'm going to take that book home and look at it a little longer. And then I'm like, okay. I looked at it. I guess I'm not as interested as I thought. I put it back and I go find another one. But
The Milford Library is a gem.
it is.
Get to know what's available, and you'll be surprised. I grew up going to that library. My kids grew up going to that library. And I still learn things that I didn't understand are available. So if you can, please take advantage of it. And a lot of it can be just the night you need to relax. Go down, bring your kids, let them go in the little kids' room or the young adult room, and just sit and absorb everything around you. Ask the librarian or the staff, hey, what should I be looking for?
Great staff.
So as always, I want to thank our 6 loyal viewers who are joining. May tomorrow be a better night at the library. God bless. Good night. And thank you for everything you all do for the families and the kids of Milford.
And thank you for
Yeah.
helping to support us.
Mm-hmm.